Hi everyone, welcome back to the Era of Experience. In the previous video, we learned about how reward signals work, and now we'll move on to the next section. But before doing that, let's just get started. And I want to mention one more point that I missed. So here, as you can see, what bi-level optimization was about in the case of rewards, it was all about the system learns which combination of lower level metrics best predict success at the high level goal, right? So optimizing between both of them. So one thing I wanted to point out with is this, I had marked it, which I forgot, was what do most of the companies use, right? I saw Whoop and Fitbit, mostly they'll use a custom designed, human designed reward function, which mostly won't use a neural network. It can just get the feedback from the environment that if the health improved, reward function could be 0.5. It has those rules established, but you can use some of them use a neural network, which kind of makes the recommendation kind of more personalized because it allows a better semantic understanding of the human feedback. So and also there could be cases, right, when where the experiential agent has to understand what the feedback means, right? So if it's getting like the blood levels, the blood pressure levels are low, if the heart rate is low, there could be a sign where the human is not verbally telling out the feedback. In that case, the experiential agent is supposed to automatically understand what the signal from the environment is. Now, one thing is, right now how it happens is you could do it through a neural network, which will basically understand, right? Or in the case of Whoop or Fitbit, you can basically use these custom functions and not use a real neural network. But what the paper envisions is, in the future, there will be no requirement of a neural network. It will just be through pure simulations that the model will be able to understand everything. It's called a world model. That's what they call it. We'll see it in the next section, right? So now that rewards is complete, we'll go to the next section of the 4 characteristics of experiential agents, where we discuss streams. We are done with rewards. Now let's go to actions and observations. How will actions and observations look in the era of experience, right? So the paper says agents in the era of experience will act autonomously in the real world, right? So it's kind of hinting at a way of getting out of this language only interaction which we have right now, what AI systems look like, right? For us, it's limited to interacting with the LLMs through text, and that's what we think AI system is. But now we are slowly but steadily getting a teaser into how experiential learning will look like, a glimpse into how experiential learning look like. We are starting to get it with tools like Anthropic released MCP, like Model Context Protocol, which is basically allowing LLMs to interact with the world, right? That's our first sign of LLMs going out of the textual-based interaction to models actually interacting with the world. So using OpenAI Connect or any other LLM, you can use the MCP, and we have seen news of and updates where LLMs have been playing games. LLMs have been out in the environment. LLMs taking control of your computer and paying your bills. So that is a teaser into the era of experience, where you move out from the textual based interaction to actually interacting with the world. LLMs running coding environments under the hood, where sometimes where you ask a doubt to ChatGPT, you can see it opens a canvas and then it starts running the code. It checks whether the code is correct or not, right? So that is a true sign to experiential learning, but it is experiential only in behavior, not in the true sense of how experiential learning be, because it is not updating its model parameters then and there, right? That's what makes all the difference, right? So it is interacting with the environment, but even though it's interacting with the environment, it is not updating its policy. It is not updating its knowledge, as happens in the case of as will happen in the case of experiential learning. So if suppose an LLM, ChatGPT is paying your bills through your credit card by interacting with your browser, it is still acting according to the previous static knowledge it has. Suppose it did something, it pressed a button, it didn't work. Then it'll again look at its previous knowledge. What do you do if it doesn't work, right? It is not getting that active signal from the environment, as we saw in the case of rewards. It's not doing having that continuous stream of experience. Suppose it ran the code, it didn't work. It'll probably try something else from its static knowledge base. It'll try something else and it check if it worked or not, right? And in most cases it does, but sometimes when you want to try out something novel, right, it might not work, because that kind of says like the sheer brilliance of LLMs that are there. They have been able to solve so many things, but as the paper said, to go beyond this to achieve superhuman intelligence will require interacting for the environment. And that is what this action and observation section was. Now let us move to another section of the paper where after we did streams, action and observation, rewards, and then planning and reasoning. How will planning and reasoning look in the era of experience? So yes, now we are here in the planning and reasoning section where will the era of experience change the way agents plan and reason, right? So it's kind of hinting towards how will planning and reasoning look. And we've already seen a teaser of it, right? Because now if you look at ChatGPT or Claude, you sort of see how the model thinks, right? You can see like the model thinking, but how is that thinking based on? So let me just pull up my notes again. So right now, we see something called a chain of thought, right? Which came out recently, and it's basically when you use advanced OpenAI models where you have that setting where they think before answering a question. They think. Even Claude, if you go, you have this think setting where they absolutely, like, before answering any question, it'll think all the steps and then it'll output the information. So how does that work? So basically, what happens is it is not that the model is actually thinking. The model is provided a set of input and output. It's like quite similar to traditional way of learning of how LLMs learn. It is not learning through experience. So the model has been shown tons of examples. Again, we are playing on the volume, tons of good examples that kind of imitate how humans think. So, and where you provide a question and an answer and the final answer. The question, the thinking part, how you think, and how you reach the final answer. And that is basically like suppose you want to, your input is what is 17 into 28. The output is the chain of thought, right? To multiply 17 into 28, I'll break this down, multiply this, multiply 17 into 8, add the results, and this is your final answer, right? So this is what the model sees. Rich, very good quality examples that imitate human way of thinking. How will a human solve this problem, right? So this is how they'll solve. Another example could be a question. You provide a train travels 60 kilometers in 2 hours. How far will it travel in 5 hours at the same speed? Again, let's think step by step. The train travels 60 kilometers in 2 hours, so the speed is 60 divided by 2, and then it sees the final answer, right? So it sees entire examples like of this, right, where you have the question, the thinking, and the final answer, and it sees multiple examples of the same type that kind of makes it understand how LLMs, how humans naturally think, right? So let me just go back to my notes. And yeah, the paper says current AI reasoning methods are explicitly designed to mimic human thinking. As we saw in the example, they have been provided good quality, rich examples of the input, the level, how you think, the chain of thought example, and the final answer. They have provided millions of examples like that allows them to imitate how humans think. But in the future era of experience, AI might develop different ways of reasoning that aren't based on human patterns alone, right? Because, and now the paper sort of gives critiques. What are the problems with this human way of thinking, right? The paper says that even though the LLM is reasoning, right? Even though it appears that it's reasoning, but it's not. It's deeply embedded in human bias. It's how humans have thought is deeply embedded in the training set, right? And again, the same point. If you want to achieve superhuman intelligence, you have to go back. You have to come out of this human way of thinking, and you have to learn from the environment to do that. So it points out some certain flaws with the human way of reasoning, right? So in the case of LLM, it was provided all these concrete, large millions of examples of how humans think. But those examples incorporate a lot of biases, right? So one example is in the training set, the LLM could have human reasoning that were 2000 years ago. How did human used to reason 500 years ago? And this sort of reasoning has changed, right? So what? In 2000 years ago, people believed bad smells came from evil spirits, right? So the AI might reason your bread spoiled because a bad spirit entered your home, right? 500 years ago, now it changed. We were seeing some modification. Experts believe in the bad air causes disease and spoilage. So AI will now say your bread spoiled because of the foul air in your kitchen, right? Again, as we progressed further, 150 years ago, germ theory emerges. Spoilage happens due to microbes, right? And the AI can now say bacteria and mold broke down the certain bread nutrients, right? And today, now we have a very good understanding we understand specific microbial species, chemical breakdown, pH levels, and on the basis of that, AI now gives a complex answer involving penicillium mold, highly detailed answer as to why that molding happened in your food or on your bed, right? So like, but this is not consistent. The AI might spit out these inherent biases in its thinking process. So whenever and that can lead to some wrong outputs as well, right? So one more example could be, and this is what the paper also mentions. 300 years ago, Newtonian mechanical laws could seem quite perfect, right? But now in our current scenario, in many situations, they don't. Quantum mechanics has revealed Newtonian laws are approximations that break down at certain scales, right? So in the case, right, suppose right now you're chatting with an LLM, right, and it provides you and you ask something related to quantum mechanics or anything related to mechanics, and its answer is kind of based on Newtonian mechanics. But in the case of reinforcement learning or learning through experience, if you tell the model that, hey, this response was wrong, it will automatically use quantum mechanics to answer your question, right? So if an AI applies a Newtonian framework in a situation where it doesn't work well, the feedback from the failure would prompt it to adjust and favor a quantum-based mechanics approach, right? So over time, this iterative learning process helps the AI refine its reasoning, make it more accurate and context aware, right? So here you see, like, even the reasoning that is there is so much rooted in in the way humans run, that it seeps, and it that so many biases seep through, like if it continues like this, right? And that's what the paper says. In the future, reasoning will be all about adaptation, and it won't have any biases like this one had, right? And in this the later part of the paper, it talks something about what is called a world model. One it counters that a way to get out of this human biases would be to directly ground thinking in the external world, to build a world model that predicts the consequences of the agent's action upon the world, including predicting a reward. So this world model is basically, a model running all the possible simulations that are there, and then incorporating that when it's actually there in the environment. Let me give you an example. In the case of, say, autonomous cars like Tesla or Waymo, what a world model would look like is the model in this case, the experiential agent in the case of Waymo or Tesla, would possibly run millions of simulations, right? And it will judge its actions on the basis of the simulation, right? So the robot could probably say, okay, the robot, imagine the robot is actually there in a simulation environment, right? And then it is actually walking, and the robot probably slips down on a slippery surface. So the robot now registers this memory that next time I'm going to avoid this. Whenever I see a slippery surface, I'm going to avoid going there, right? So it's basically an AI's internal reality simulator that the world model is, right? So it will basically run billions of simulations, and then when it is actually out in the environment doing stuff, when Waymo is actually out in the environment driving the car, that autonomous cars, it will use its knowledge from the simulation environment, and it can also update its knowledge in the world model based on what feedback it sees. So what do I mean by that is, suppose an autonomous car is out in the environment, right? It has learned something from simulation, but right now it sees that, oh, maybe okay, when I tried my knowledge from that world model that I gathered from all the simulations that I ran, right now when I use that same knowledge, it didn't work out. Maybe I'll update that. So it can even update its learnings from the simulation world model when it's actually out in the environment. And this is what will change everything, right? So people say attention is all you need, but future will be simulation is all you need. How you encode reality in simulation is going to affect everything. If your simulations are good, right? If your simulations model all the uncertainties, then you'll have a really good model, right? People sometimes, we tend to trivialize, I'm passing my opinion here, but we tend to trivialize simulations as being, a practice environment. But simulation is actually the birthplace of intelligence. If your simulations are good, that's when you will get the best output from your models, right? Like this balance of balancing the breadth of simulation plus the depth of experience, breadth of simulation in the simulation environment versus depth of experience in actually the real environment. If you can tweak these parameters correctly, This will be the future of superhuman intelligence, where through simulations, you'll make your model so risk averse, so capable that the real environment, you won't have any issues at all. This is what the world model is all about, and that is what many companies do. If you look at, I've read about Tesla's as well as Waymo's simulation environment. They spend so much money and so much time in simulation, where the model is passed through so many different scenarios, right? So that it has all the knowledge equipped, and with all that simulation that it gets, it's out there in the environment, and there is also that room of updating its knowledge from the simulation. So this is what the world model is all about. And couple of reality checks. Right now, we are not in a setting where we are actually updating in real time. That is a thing for the future. What this paper talks about, superhuman intelligence or artificial general intelligence, will all be about updating the knowledge from your world models, from your simulation environment to the actual environment as well. So an example could be, if a robot is walking, it says it learned probably during its simulation environment that I'm going to avoid walking on shiny surfaces. It maybe learned something like this. I'm just thinking out loud. Whenever I see a shiny surface, I just won't walk there. It probably learned this during its simulation. But when it's out there in the environment, it found a particular shiny surface where it noticed that when it was walking there, it didn't fall. So it can update that world model logic that it learned from the simulation environment to the actual real environment. So bridging the gap between simulation and reality is going to be the future on which AGIs will be laid upon, right? So yeah, this was it for the simulation. And in the next video, we will talk about the most interesting part, as I've been saying out loud. Should ChatGPT be alive? What will be the level of human involvement in superhuman intelligence? What can humans control? What should they not control? And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.